Welcome to the worst sports channel on YouTube, Hot Garbage Sports, with me, Coach Ryan D. The NHL players, certain ones anyway, are frustrated not going to the Olympics, and the guys that have secure contracts, have been in the league for quite some time, are voicing and speaking up their opinions. Brad Marchand, Vladimir Tarasenko both publicly acknowledge their frustration with the ability to not be able to choose to go to the Olympics. Now, the suggestions that Marchand and Tarasenko offered were never on the table as options. These players were looking to be able to make an individual choice outside of their NHL clubs, which is not part of their contract. Fans did the typical, in which they told players they should be looking to take pay cuts if they want to be able to move over to the Olympics, which again is a ridiculous argument because this is not going to happen. The players aren't going, but Brad Marchand clapped back in beautiful Brad Marchand fashion and said, hey, not a problem. I'll take a pay cut to go. And that's what we want to discuss here right now, is that there are a lot of NHL players just like you and me as regular people who want to be able to make their own choice. There's definitely two sides to the argument and a whole bunch of people in between, but the two sides are the loudest. There's the side that's looking to protect the group and in favor of the group, and they heavily understand what's going on and they don't want to go. There's the other side that says, hey, I'm an adult. Let me make my own individual choice. But when it comes to hockey, it's not like the COVID-19 vaccine or anything out there. This is a contractual business obligation that the players have to the league. They are in a union. They have to work as a collective. And unfortunately, at no point in time in any professional or major sports in North America do the unionized players in any of the four major sports get to make individual choices outside of their contracts. That's just what happens. So understandably, emotionally, and empathetically, there are people that can definitely side with guys like Marchand, Tarasenko, or even the disappointment of Steven Stamkos, who did not publicly acknowledge that he was upset about this games being canceled. But Stamkos did acknowledge that he was upset about the last games in Pyeongchang being canceled because it was canceled for a totally different set of circumstances. He acknowledges and understands COVID-19 as difficulty. So there really is no question or debate coming forward. The decision is made. The players are not going. It's disappointing. Guys like Tarasenko, Marchand, and Stamkos will never get the opportunity again to compete at the Olympics, likely due to their age. The World Cup of Hockey may make a return, but Stamkos said it best, this is not the same at all in players' minds. Taylor Hall was quoted as saying, we need to make the World Cup of Hockey as important to the fans as the Olympics is, and maybe that is possible, maybe it isn't. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. But to Steven Stamkos and the rest of the players, they said there is nothing like achieving Olympic gold. However, there's further questions to explore when it comes to the prospect of going to the Olympics. Number one is that the Olympics is usually ran in other places outside of North America at this point, and that is for one simple reason. We know there's difficulty in challenges by the IOC and the rest of the Olympic Committee to get the funding that is required. I mean, it's a ridiculous spend to ask cities to take on this kind of infrastructure cost to bring the Olympics in, and I kind of feel that North America is done with that. They just don't want to spend $50 billion like the Russians did to host an Olympic Games, or whatever the Chinese ended up spending, just these ridiculous sums of money to not see the return. The Vancouver Olympic Games did not spend anywhere near what was spent at Sochi. It was $10 billion versus $50 billion. These are costs that are palatable to a city, and the city of Vancouver did end up doing quite well with the Olympics, both from a cost standpoint and a success standpoint. But it gets ridiculous when you're trying to compete with some of these other world powers that are just spending anything and everything in order to host the Olympics. We all know there's challenges at playing in the other countries. And we all know right now there's a bit of divide in the world when it comes to how people view China. I'm not giving any of my opinions about that on this channel here. We try to stay with sports and with hockey solely and only, but there are definitely opposing views from players, fans, and everything about the Olympics just being in China in general, and China's, the viewpoint, let's say, people have on China around the world. Some of it favorable, some of it not favorable, a whole bunch of people in between. So the players aren't going. They feel discouraged, or some of them at least feel safe enough to be able to say how they feel about it. Let me know how you feel down below in the comments.